Okay, great. Hi guys, hello. So I'm starting off with question 32, and then I'll go back and look at the objectives. But let's look at this first. So you have this business called Packer. A couple of things to note here. Packer buys 90% of the share capital of Scott. Okay, so the first thing to note as you're looking at this is it's a very sneaky question, but I think it's a good question because it forces you to really be awake to all the issues here. First of all, the year end is the 30th of September 2004, and it tells you that you buy it on the 1st of May. So you're thinking straight away, right, I don't have, Packer will not have access, if you like, to the profits for the full year. They'll only just have it for about 5 months, won't it? So that's the 1st of May to the 30th of September. So that's something you need to sort of be aware of when you're preparing your statements, that you only really can, if you like, map five months out of 12 of Scott. Just sort of an awareness. The next thing is that although they buy 90% of the share capital, they don't pay any cash. So they have this share exchange, which you really have to be careful with. So it says 2 shares in Packer for every 3 acquired in Scott. So you need to be careful with that as well. And then they also tell you also do something via loan note. And only the loan consideration has been recorded. So you're aware that when you come to working 5, if you like, or the equity bit of Packer, you have to introduce that capital outstanding. And then you get some figures over here. So let's kind of look at this. You have Packer, you have Scott, and then you have, of course, you've read the question before you look at what I'm doing. I'm just kind of going through the workings just to make sure that you're happy if there are any concerns. And let's just go. So I'm going to start. And you have quite a few adjustments that you have to play with. So generally with this, what you always want to do as usual is to always have, if you like, a kind of working schedule, right? And always good to do that. So you can see here 90%, and we typically call this working 1. And it says that Packer buys Scott for 90% of Scott's share capital. That's really the ownership issue here. So let's just I'm literally gonna create a page for every single thing I do. So that's that. Great. So we have that. The next thing is we're starting to think, we need a working 2 sort of setup. So I'm thinking, okay, if I remember working 2, it must be net assets at acquisition, net assets at year end, and post-ac, right? So this is your setup. So of course, net acquisitions must be share capital and retained earnings. So that's what we're going to start with. So this is when I say at acquisition, you acquired these people on the 1st of May, didn't you? And the year end is the 30th of September. Right. So let's go back to the information and let's see what we have. So if we come over here, we can see that their Scott's share capital. Remember, the working 2 is for the subsidiary. That's what we're trying to deal with, because we're trying to find out what profit has been made over the year, and we must do all of these at fair values, right? So we have 200,000, and we have retained earnings at the end of the year. So at least we know that we can go here, and we have share capital 200,000. And it tells us that at the year we have 216. We know this, of course, must be 200,000 as well, because usually it's rare for the subsidiary to be issuing any new shares during the year of acquisition. But so typically that's the question here is, what is retained earnings? So in a way, you need a bit of a working. You have to kind of watch what's really happening. It's a nice. When I say it's a nice question, it's not difficult. You just really have to watch what's going on. So if you see here. They tell us, you almost have to look for it, if you like, look for the information. I had to look for it, and you have to sort of see where they're going. So you can see here, it says the Scott made, if you look at this last one, it says Scott made a bit of 34.14 million during the year. So we know that sometime between the 1st of October, let me just go back to this. I'll do it here. It doesn't matter. It's all recorded, so you can flip back and forth. Sometime between the 1st of October 2003, all the way to the 1st of May 2004, and then all the way to the 30th of September 2004. In this whole period, they made profits of 34.14 million. Now, the question here is that we took over this business, if you like, here. So the only profits we will have access to, of course, are the profits in this sort of later period. So the question is, what were retained earnings here? Because we want to know what the value of the business was at acquisition. So we know that there's 7 months here and there's 5 months here. So in order to find out what that is, we need to sort of pretty much just work out what 7 divided by 12 times 34 million is, pretty much. And if we do that, we have, I'm just working it out right now, 7 divided by 12 times 34,140 gives us 19. So we can see here we have profits, retained earnings at acquisition of, profits of, at, if you like, profits made in this first period of 19,915, and therefore profits made in the 34,140 in this period here of 14,225. Great. And we know what the retained earnings are at the end of the year. We're given that. We're told that the retained earnings at the end of the year were 216,000, which means if this was retained earnings at the end of the year, then retained earnings here must have been 216,000 minus 14,225, right? Because really, we got here, and then we just added another 14,225 to arrive here. So pretty much it was 216,000, and that takes us to, if you like, retained earnings of 201,775. So retained earnings on the 1st of May 2004, 101,775,000. And that's how we kind of do that. So you almost needed to kind of do a little bit of play with that. Let's just go back here. So that means, therefore, this is 201,775. Right? And that's why the difference, of course, the difference between this and this, of course, is the 14,225 that we have already calculated. So we're gradually building our working too. This is a big one, isn't it? Really, this helps us. Once we do this working, we start to see what's going on. Now, the standard requires us to measure net assets at acquisition at fair value, right? We need to measure it at fair value. So we need to look through the adjustments to see what's going on. I'm going to do this in a series of, so it's not too long, but there you go. So go back here. We are told that, we're told in the question that we have a situation where, at the date of acquisition, so you're always looking out for fair value adjustments, right? At the date of acquisition, the fair value of the assets were equal to their carrying amount, with the exception of the head office, which had a fair value of 60 million in excess of the carrying amount. So this means that when I come back here, that means that definitely, I mean, technically the double entry is debit Scott, if you like, building 60, right? And we're going to see that when it comes to the statement of financial position, and credit, if you like this with the fair value adjustment. I mean, this will fall in value as we go along, but we'll do that when we get there. So now, yes, I'm happy. I have what my, let's look through, and I think it's good to look through. I mean, I'm saying I'm happy because I've looked through and I see there's nothing else I need to do for the beginning of the period, right? I look through, and at least I've now I've sort of looked through and I can see what the situation would be at the beginning of the year. Okay, great. So now you kind of add all this together, and this should give you 461,775. And then you have that. Right. So let's look. We could go ahead and do goodwill, but let's look at what else we could do in here before we move ahead. But I mean, again, like I say, there's a range of ways of dealing with this. So we have, just sticking with this, because we've already dealt with this, it tells us that it has a remaining life of 40 years at that date. So remember that you're only 5 months. There's only a period of 5 months in this sorry, forgive me. There's only a period of 5 months here. So there's only 5 months of depreciation, really. It's a 5-month period. So this thing tells us that at 60 million, it falls, if you like, this is it from pen color, right? So just going back here, they tell us that this is 40 years. So I'm just going to do that over here. So it's really sort of telling us that you have, if you like, this thing worth 60 million, and then technically it's 60 million over 40 years, right? Each year, and then we only need 5/12 of that, right? Because that's all we have, and that gives us 625,000. So we have additional depreciation of 625,000 happening during that year. So in my statement of financial position, because I'm just teaching, when you're doing the statement of financial, you have all your assets of Parker plus assets of Scott, and you will add on the 60 million. Of course you will, the 60 million, and then you will take off the 625,000 because that's the, we're now dealing with this asset at its fair value. Yeah. Great. So, well, of course, I mean, this 625, because we're looking at valuations ultimately, yes, the fair value was 60 million, but now, of course, it is 60 million less the 625 by the end of the period. I mean, that's the double entry. Technically, this is accumulated depreciation, isn't it? Because we're really, and we'll see the 625 in the consolidated income statement, won't we? Okay, brilliant. Great. I don't like these videos typically being too long, so I think what I'll do is I will just, I'll pause there and then start the next video from there.